Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Talks Daily podcast, where every day we explore how technology is reshaping the business landscape and solving real-world problems. I'm your host, Neil C. Hughes, and today I've got a great thought leader in the field of AI and technology development joining me on the podcast. He's the CTO of a company called Safeguard Global, and he brings with him a wealth of experience in developing disruptive AI tools. And he's going to be sharing his insights on how tech leaders and business leaders alike can make the development process productive, positive, and ultimately successful. And if you're just hearing about Safeguard Global for the very first time, they're a workforce solutions company they've adopted a work-in-any-way approach that's flexible and people-centric, especially in a way that they hire in-demand technology talent to achieve business goals. But there's so much I want to talk about today, about how organisations can better leverage the strengths of humans and AI to create a more harmonious and productive work environment, offer a helping hand for any business leaders that want to leverage AI but they're sat on the sidelines wondering what move to make, how to overcome existing technical debt, and also how to initiate and sustain a culture change within an organisation when adopting things like AI technology, and also explore the world of quick innovation sprint. But before we get today's guest on, it's time for a quick shout out to the sponsors of Tech Talks Daily. And in today's digital age where data breaches are all too common, securing sensitive information has never been more critical, right? Well, enter Kiteworks, a pinnacle of managed file transfer security, or MFT security. So with its FedRAMP moderate authorization, a prestigious certification that they've held since 2017 by the Department of Defense, Kiteworks stand as a bastion of security in a sea of uncertainty. This isn't just about meeting standards, though. It's about exceeding them, ensuring your data's safety within your organisation while streamlining compliance processes that ultimately save you time, effort, and money. So step into the future of secure file transfer with Kiteworks by visiting kiteworks.com today to see why it's hailed as the most secure MFT on the market. So once again, kiteworks.com. And now, let's get today's guest on. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Austin, Texas, where our guest is waiting to join me today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
So thank you for having me. First off, it's an honor to be here. So I'm Duri Chitayat. I'm CTO at Safeguard Global. A little bit about me. I'm a cat herder, problem solver, and people amplifier. I support cross-functional agile teams at Safeguard Global to ship products that make life better for people. A little bit about my journey. It's a bit unconventional, but I think it's what's helped attract me to Safeguard and some of the things that we're talking about. I've navigated through various different industries and geographies through my career. So after graduating Boston College, I started working at a company that did robotics and PCB manufacturing in New York. And then I found myself in product development in China. And then I founded a social e-commerce company in China as well. And then led consulting across several different digital agencies, both in China and New York. And then I got into technology transformation, really focusing on emerging technologies in ad tech, healthcare, banking, wealth management in Chicago, New York, and the UK. And for the last 3 years or thereabouts, I've been with Safeguard, based in our headquarters here in Austin, Texas. For those that don't know Safeguard, Safeguard Global is a global workforce enablement platform. We enable organizations to analyze, recruit, hire, manage, and pay anyone around the world, which means ultimately that they can help make global talent a competitive advantage for their company. And our technology platform is really a central pillar of what we are as a company.
And one of the reasons that attracted me to you guys, and why I wanted to get you on the podcast today, is I always say every day that technology works best when it brings people together. And yes, this is a tech podcast, and what you do is help bringing in tech talent, but you do it in a way that's flexible and people-centric to get those to hire those in-demand technology talent that businesses need to achieve their goals. And it's that fine balance between technology and people that I think is so sadly lacking in a lot of areas. So just to set the scene for our conversation today, from everything that you've seen in your work, how can organisations better leverage the strengths of both humans and AI and emerging technology to create a more harmonious and productive work environment? And maybe you've got a few specific examples from your experience at Safeguard Global that you might be able to share, because we've seen all those bad stories, those scary stories that frequent our news feeds, but there's a completely different side to this tale, isn't there?
That's right. Let me start by perhaps setting the scene a little bit. Yeah, because I think it's important to understand directionally where we're headed and also where we are with AI. So first, obviously, AI is not new. It's been around for many decades. I've worked with it in healthcare and in banking and ad tech. So it's a technology. When we say AI, it's a technology that's been around, but clearly with ChatGPT, a little over a year ago, something's happened. Some wave of change has happened. And, just a couple data points that always kind of hit it home for me is that ChatGPT achieved the fastest consumer adoption rate of any product ever. And that, another thing that's really kind of sparks an interest for me is that within the developer community, it has also grabbed people's attention. So I like to go to the site called There's an AI for That. And within it, you can see that there's been more than 1,000 new AI projects a month there. So that kind of groundswell of interest is unlike anything we've ever seen before. Now, your question is really about how does that context kind of work with people? A lot of people's intuition around AI is that it will replace people because artificial intelligence, humans are intelligent, therefore they're basically synonymous and replaceable. And I think the terms like neural net also kind of causes people to believe that these are thinking machines. And it's important that people understand that it's not. That this technology that we have today is not a thinking machine. It is a stochastic parrot, a very useful stochastic parrot. So what's different about these large language models? Let's take for example, what we used to do in the past. If we wanted to teach an AI to recognize a cat, we would tell it, well, a cat has ears and a nose and 4 legs and a tail, and it could be fluffy, it could be black, it could be white, it could be like this, it could be like that. And you just keep writing all these descriptions of cats until, effectively you get a good description of a cat. Now, obviously that is time consuming, and error prone and hard to maintain. And that's what made kind of like the big data revolution that we were supposed to have over a decade ago kind of go nowhere for most companies, because it was just really, really hard to apply these machine learning techniques at the time. Now, what's different about these transformers is that it's building upon a different sort of architecture. It's this deep learning architecture, which effectively means you can throw lots of information at it. And with OpenAI 3.5, you're able, and ChatGPT, we were able to have both an intuitive interface combined with that large amount of data and statistical model that could then predict the next word in what you wanted to have to say. So with minimal amount of effort, you could have human-like responses. But I hope I'm being clear though, is that effectively what's happening under the covers here is a statistical relationship between the prompt that you're providing, the context, and the underlying model that's been pre-trained. What it's not doing is thinking about what you said and logically coming up with a response. It's not to the point of logic. It's just to the point of stochastic parrot. It's repeating the next thing that should be in the line. So how does this work with organizations and people? How do we combine the best of both worlds? I could give one example from Safeguard is a tool we built called ChatSG. It's a generative AI application, RAG based. So it's not just going to the large language model that's just doing that, but also providing context. And then it's returning effectively answers about the local HR practices, legal stuff that otherwise people would have to go to many different websites, different sources to find credible answers for. So it's hopefully breaking down the barriers between the knowledge and the response. Now, the question around where's the people in that? Well, in the technology, there's no people, but in the data is a reflection of over a decade of experience in HR embedded into our knowledge base and the constant development of that data by our team of over 1,800 global HR experts, some of the best in the world, building that knowledge base and maintaining that knowledge base and observing the answers that the AI is giving back and curating it to make it better and better and better. But they're developing a generative system by being effectively a part of that system. But it's moving them away from what they were doing in the past. That's kind of to me, the direction that we're headed is making knowledge more accessible, more repeatable, higher quality, more available, faster, and it rewards people for their expertise as opposed to just being there to do the work. So it's creating the ability to have economies of scale for expertise. And I think that's something that we've seen happen in other industries. And with this technology, it's just more broadly possible.
And I'm so glad you've said that. It's so many important points there that are often missed when we're talking about AI. And you also were able to bust a few myths and misconceptions around AI. And I think it's so important because many business leaders want to leverage AI now. They need to know they know they need to be doing something. And maybe they're listening to this podcast to pick up a few tips on where that journey should start. So in what ways do you think things like strategic planning, leadership development, and clear communication play a role in the successful implementation of AI technologies? Because although we're talking about new, exciting technology, those fundamentals are more important than ever, right?
Absolutely. I think leadership is a big part of what makes people capable of change and capable of seeing the next step. And as I was saying before, I truly believe we're at a phase transition. We've had industrial revolutions of the past, which has changed how organizations fit together, the roles, the way in which people operate. The IMF today says that almost half of all jobs in the entire world will be affected by this technology. And at Davos recently, I think I heard it remarked that if Gen AI wasn't part of a panel, that they would be the outlier. So people are recognizing that this is important. What leadership will help people do is understand how this is different and how they can be prepared. And one of the reasons why that is necessary to be explained is because large language models are weird. They really are a different paradigm, something that we're just not used to doing. I'll give you an example. A lot of people's intuition when some of these AI technologies exist is like, oh, we could just put OpenAI behind a chatbot and it'll do our customer service for us. Yeah, yeah, it's gonna start to respond. It's gonna sound human-like, but it's not gonna give the kind of responses that you want. Why? It's because these things like OpenAI, for instance, it has in it the entire internet, and it will respond based on the weights of the information that it received. But in the end of the day, it believes that the world is both flat and round, right? Because on the internet, you can find both answers. Now, both answers are not equally correct, and probably not in the equal weight. So it will, on average, respond with the Earth is round. But if you asked it in the right ways, it'll eventually give you the statistical response of that is, in my view, wrong. Most people's view is wrong, that the world is flat. And so this is kind of an intuition that needs to be trained into people to kind of think about of the meta data, the data, not just in how the thing is structured, not just in the prompt engineering, but also in the underlying foundational data and how we can pre-train and fine-tune these things. And it also gives these leaders an understanding of like why we're not there yet. There are certain reasons to be optimistic about this year being yet another sea change that unlocks things for many organizations. But they must first understand kind of the key challenges that prevent these technologies from being taken at completely face value. At first blush, your intuitions will be wrong.
And another issue we've got to talk about, of course, is technical debt before we start adding new shiny technologies into the mix. And you have indicated that legacy systems often create data accessibility issues for AI implementation. So is there any advice you can share on strategies for reshaping that technological architecture to facilitate that better AI integration and stop problems before they occur?
So I could offer what I've seen work for organizations these days. At Safeguard, we've applied an approach we call, that's called in the industry data mesh. This became kind of popular about 2 years ago, and the concept is fundamentally about ensuring liberation of data from your applications, that you can let it to be independent, so that it can be then leveraged for these kinds of purposes. And it's about a democratized data governance, data literacy, and quality programs that can be operated at scale without a central team. Now, this is all kind of nice to say if you're on greenfield, but as you say, there's kind of a lot of legacy out there, and organizations that have some of the most valuable data in the world might find it difficult for them to leverage it to be able to win in this new AI race. Some of the things that worked for Safeguard is that we made it a common, like a top level priority to provide teams the training and the governance structures and the incentive structures to make data a first-class citizen, that we treat it with a lot of safety protocols to make sure that we respect our clients' privacy and security. And then we think about optionality. So we don't design that data to be leveraged just for one use case, but instead design it to be available within the system, which is a big part of the concept of data mesh.
And even with the best plan in place, they also need the right people. So there is a huge tech talent shortage at the moment. A lot of AI expertise is in demand. So how do you address that talent gap when it comes to AI expertise, especially considering that required skill set that sits between data science and software engineering? Any advice that you'd offer to tech leaders or business leaders that are facing challenges around securing the right talent right now?
I think the skill that's most in demand right now that's needed is this kind of AI engineer. Now, what that AI engineer is, it's not building foundation models. They don't need to necessarily even be, have a PhD in artificial intelligence. Instead, what they need to be is a problem solver that has experience across a broad array of the emerging field, and the ability to do something called technology scouting, to find the best in class open source capabilities and apply it in a way that is evolutionary, meaning that, they're not just thinking of it as like, this is the solution, but instead think of it as a door to walk through that then opens up other doors. So how do we go about finding that talent? Well, it is a big challenge. As you said, there is a talent shortage, and often the best person for the job isn't working within 50 miles of your office. And so at Safeguard, I've very strongly pushed the premise that you find the best talent anywhere, period, and that you work in any way to make that person a part of your organization. So for instance, at Safeguard, we have 155 product and engineers across 22 different countries. And many times we have teams of 8 people that can be spread out across 3 or 4 continents. That's quite a different sort of structure that I would have imagined 10 years ago, but it works. Why? Because you're emphasizing skills and talent and experience over proximity to your office space. And when I put it like that, it's kind of obvious, but still people tend to still lean into old patterns because they think that gives them more control. In my experience, this sort of field, this kind of challenge that we're dealing with, the complexity and the interconnectedness and interdisciplinary aspects of the economy that we're working in, means that leaders need to relinquish control and instead double down on a strategy that focuses on the individuals on the ground being the smart ones, right? Giving them the autonomy and the capabilities to go and run at it themselves. And so you have to basically make and pull out all the stops for your talent strategy. Beyond that, one thing that we talked a little bit about before was the importance of leadership. Even with a lot of experience and skills, these large language models and paradigms are still emerging, and no one is an expert in it yet. And so leaders need to create space for people to experiment. They need to be able to trial things. They need to pull in technologies that are in open source projects that have only been around for 3 months and are maintained by 15 people. Like that would have been unheard of when I was working in banking. But I see it as a key to our strategic advantage, is that we're willing and able to try things and let it fail. And if it fails, stop doing it. ChatSG is an example. We rebuilt it 3 times before we ever released it. And by the way, we released it in 3 months with less than 3 people. So 3 people in less than 3 months rebuilt the same application 3 times. So I think it just goes to show you that experimentation and trusting the people on the ground is really the remedy for the complexity that we have today.
And if I look back at my own career in IT, a lot of the same problems always seem to repeat over the years. And that is, you can have the right people in place to deliver that technological change. You can have the latest must-have technology that's going to solve all the problems, but it's no good if you're got that attitude of, but hey, we've always done it this way. So how do you initiate and sustain a culture change within an organization that is maybe resistant to adopting new technologies like AI? Are there any management strategies that you found particularly effective in guiding people through that change curve? It's the oldest tale of time, isn't it? But possibly one of the most important ones.
So I'll put my hand up right now and just say this is probably the hardest part of the job. The culture gap, because an expert, particularly if you've hired a lot of really smart experts, will reflect on their past and say, hey, this has worked for me. This is what's gotten me here. And now you're saying we need to go try something different. And, so you are asking people to do something that is instinctively hard to do. And it comes with, ambiguity and, concern that we don't know enough to actually make this decision. So a couple suggestions I would make is there's a great author on the subject, Cotter, and he's come up with a Cotter change model that one of its key components is the idea of working across the organization, not just within your silo of your department. Changing minds by helping solve a real foundational problem that they have within their daily work, and convincing people that you're not going to just automate away their jobs, because in the end of the day, even software engineers today are worried that, well, with this new technology, am I even relevant anymore? You have to really lead with that value that says, I'm not here to replace people with technology. I'm here to build the best organization possible. And that means that we're going to make you the best at working with technology. And so I think really leaning into those values and believing, don't make them just a marketing banner, but make them really core to how you approach problems. It's more likely than anything to get people to buy in, I suppose.
Fantastic. And I had Dave West, CEO of Scrum, on last week. So another question that I've got to ask is, can you elaborate on the concept of quick innovation sprints and how those sprints might have led to effective proofs of concept that, and maybe some lessons that have been learned through this agile approach? Because again, incredibly exciting approach to innovation, isn't it?
Yes. Dave is brilliant. He gave me some help a few years ago when I was actually exploring some of the similar concepts. And I think for us, one of the keys is to have low cost, low risk investments to bring down the fear and to educate people. So, this is what we call the innovation sprint. It's very commonly known as design sprints. It's the idea that you try to solve for complexity by learning through experience, and you break down people's preconceptions before they've calcified. That's a technique that works very well, particularly if you make it not just an engineering or product experience, but you also involve your stakeholders. So people like operations, in my situation, people like operations, marketing, and sales are often, we see them as a key component of the overall system. And so involving them in that sprint so that they're also feel part of the experience of learning and creating the solution, that's what makes it successful. And then on the back of that innovation sprint, now you're ready to kind of plan, right? Now you're ready to kind of establish what your initial hypothesis is, your MVP, and still treat it as a, short range, high risk, but potentially high reward activity, but with perhaps a bit more weight behind it. And you slowly work towards a state where you've met product market fit, and it's not forced. It's not a forced assumption. You've really gone through that diverge and converge activity in the innovation sprint and the succeeding MVPs.
And I also think bringing AI into an organization, it is more of a journey than a destination. It's not just a box ticking exercise. So what does a commitment to continuous improvement look like in the context of AI development? Are there any key KPIs or the organization should be monitoring?
Key KPIs for how the organization is performing with AI are, I would say, things like your traditional business ROI measures, like ultimately bringing us back to creating true value. Because the challenge that I remember of the big data era was that we spent, I don't know how many millions and millions of dollars every organization invested in like getting their data into one place, but then we couldn't figure out how to get like true disruptive value out the other end. And so for me, I really focus on small investments that have laser focus on developing a valuable outcome and being really specific about what that outcome is. So we're not navel gazing on technology, but we're really focusing on, let's improve this customer satisfaction metric, or let's increase the organization's ability to make good decisions by surfacing information earlier. Those kinds of things you can start to put contextual KPIs around, and I think that it gives you the best success when you can show the organization something on the balance sheet that you've achieved.
Brilliant. Absolutely love that. And as I said a few moments ago in our interview here, many business leaders will want to leverage AI. Maybe they're listening to this podcast, maybe looking to pick up a few tips on where their journey should start and learn from someone like your good self here that has walked a mile in these shoes already. So any advice on how people listening can incorporate creative problem-solving techniques into the development of new AI solutions? And any examples you can share of where creative problem-solving might have led to breakthroughs or success in AI deployment? I appreciate it's probably not too much you can share, but is there anything you can?
Well, first of all, I think small teams of the best talent is the first and most crucial ingredient. That if you, as an executive, set up a team that doesn't have the skills, experience, or feeling of empowerment to go and make wild decisions, then you haven't put them in a place where they can be creative. That ultimately they're just going to go and paint by the numbers. So the talent, the people, putting them in the right place is number one. Number two is make sure that they're really invested with the right idea of the KPI. So going back to the last question around what is the outcome that you're looking for them to achieve. Third is, I would say, make sure that they have freedom to operate. So at Safeguard, we really believe in work in any way, which means that they are responsible for choosing their tools. They get to pick the technology. They get to go and do the technology scouting. And, you're constantly coaching them to say, but if it's going to take you a month, what would it take to do it in a day? And so you're pressuring them to, with constraints around time, to think differently, right? So that constant compression of time is also a really great asset. You will hear anybody that knows me will often say they might say something nice, but usually it'll end something with, but he really, really wants it now. And I think that in some cases that could be a very bad method. Pressuring people on time could cause burnout and all kinds of bad things. But in the right circumstances, with the right values behind it and the right flexibility and the ability for people to push back and say it's not possible, it can cause people to think differently. It could cause people to squeeze out waste from the system and to focus in on their key assumptions. And that's often where insight happens. Oh, and one more thing I can't overstate, that ultimately an engineer is only as smart as his or her experience. If you can combine that with other disciplines, other people in the organization that have different experiences, then you're much more likely to find some unique and uncommon insight. And you see this often in the ecology, is that the place in the world where there is often the most biodiversity is often on the borders between deserts and rainforests. It's the places where two disparate systems merge, where you get this groundswell of beauty and an uncommonness and bizarreness, and that is what I believe leads to innovation.
I think that's a beautiful moment to end on. But before I do, we started the podcast talking about your origin story and what put you on this path. But as we come full circle now, if you look back on your career, what was the funniest or most interesting story that has happened to you? Because I suspect that you've picked a few up along the way, right?
I certainly have. So at the beginning of the pandemic, I'd been working at a wealth management company in New York, and I had to be in formal clothes when I went to the office. And I said to myself when the pandemic happened that I wonder if I'm ever going to wear those clothes again. It's now been how many years, and they're still gathering dust in my closet. I think it's just a wonderful thing to be at home and express myself in the way that I want, in my hoodie and my t-shirt, and still feel like I can do a great job. And I think it goes to it goes to show me that I found a home here at Safeguard because everybody's the same kind of way. We're a remote first company, and haven't had to wear a suit since.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I'm exactly the same. And for anyone listening just wants to find out more information about Safeguard Global, dig a little bit deeper on some of the topics we explored today, where would you like to point everyone listening, and how can they contact your team?
So go to safeguardglobal.com. You can contact us, and you could also try a lot of our tools for free there. Also, if you want to get in touch with me directly, you can find me at LinkedIn or on X at Duri Chitayat.
Awesome. Well, I will add all those links to the show notes so people can find you nice and easily. And although we've talked all about artificial intelligence today and how to implement it into an organization, for me, the big key to our conversation is about people, and how the emergence of AI is not about replacing people. It's about providing an opportunity to reassess work dynamics and prioritize human strengths like creativity, strategic thinking, emotional intelligence, all those areas where automation falls short. But just a big thank you for your help today and bringing this topic to life.
Thank you, Neil. Great to be here.
Now, that concludes our conversation today. And I think as we explored the world of AI development and the opportunities that it presents for tech leaders, I think the big takeaway was things like quick innovation sprints, continuous improvement, and creative problem solving. These are the key factors here. And the emergence of AI is indeed reshaping the way we work, but it's vital for companies to invest in their teams and their people. And only then can you adapt to these new technologies. But obviously, I make it sound so easy, don't I? But of course, there are so many challenges to overcome, from data accessibility to talent acquisition to fostering a culture of change. And these problems and these challenges are something felt inside of every organisation of every size in every country that I know you're all listening in today. So you've heard from me, you've heard from today's guest. I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on integrating AI into your organisation? Have you faced any challenges that we've discussed today, and how did you overcome them? Whether you want to leave me a quick voicemail by hitting record on your WhatsApp and emailing me to techblogwriter@outlook.com, or maybe Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, you can send me a message there. Equally, if you'd like to have a conversation with me, come on the podcast and share a different side to this story. I'm up for anything. So please keep your messages coming in. Thank you for tuning in today. Remember, the future is dominated by tech, but the future is also collaborative. So until next time, keep innovating, keep exploring the endless possibilities that technology brings, and we'll reconvene bright and early tomorrow morning. See you then.